What's going on, guys? Today we are going to be taking a look at a server called MCCentral that some of you may or may not be familiar with. So for a very long time, MCC has had the pay to win label put onto it by both players within and outside of its community in regards towards pretty much every game mode of the server, in the sense that success on the server's game modes usually revolves around purchasing a rank for real money. However, today we're going to be doing an experiment with strictly survival games, and we're going to determine if it is indeed pay to win or if that's actually not the case. So with that being said, anything I say in this video is really only in regards to survival games and not any other game out of the server. So for this experiment, what I did was I went and I played 100 games on an account with fully maxed out perks, and then I played 100 games on an account with 0 perks or abilities whatsoever. For the 100 games, I'm going to keep note of all the stats, and at the end I'm going to compare them along with my own experiences from the games that I played. Shout out to Absy for letting me use her alt for the rookie portion of the experiment, as I didn't have a fresh account at my disposal at the time, and shout out to Astrophysic for letting me use his account for the donator portion. And most of all, shout out to Athonian, the guy who gave me the inspiration to do this video in the first place. I'll leave his original forum post in the description for anybody who wants to check it out. The way I tracked my stats was structured pretty much the same as Athonian's post. I got a spreadsheet, and after every game I would note down the amount of kills, wins, cause of death if I did die that game, and then some other miscellaneous information. One death can apply in the specific death stats category multiple times. For example, if I die to someone who has more gear than me within the first minute of the game, that's going in both categories. Rules of the challenge are, I'm not allowed to team with anyone. If I team with someone, or if someone deliberately drops me gear to help me, then the game doesn't count. I can be in calls with friends in my game, but we have to fight. Other than that, every resource I have available to me goes. So that means on the no perks account, I'm allowed to use levels that I gained as I played to enchant, but no purchasable perks or abilities. Anything I obtain from kills goes as well, such as enchanted gear. And as a donator, I'm allowed to use all of my kits, my spawn eggs, levels as much as I want. Anything goes, and I can play as scummy as I want as well. No rules against cleanups or any of that. I'm a sweaty solo player, so who's gonna stop me? So let's start off with the results of the no perks account. The first thing that I noticed was how difficult it was to really get momentum in the game. My main strategy was to just go for spawn every single game, excluding certain maps. For example, Par 72 in this clip, I rarely ever go to mid on this map. So I'll go to spawn, hope I get a weapon, and then get spawn kills early in the game so that I can get armor fast. Because of the randomized tiering on this server, chest routes aren't really going to guarantee me any good gear. So the most efficient way to get gear, in my opinion, is to actually kill people. That's why I went with this strategy for the most part. Spawn kills are nice because, and while I don't really agree with targeting, the first 30 to 60 seconds of the game are honestly the most chaotic. There's distractions everywhere at mid, so it's pretty easy to take advantage of this and just crit someone out from behind, or to chase someone with gear while they're low or they don't have a weapon yet. It's been done to me so many times on my main, deliberately targeted towards me, so I don't really feel bad doing it. But the problem is, I didn't get a weapon off spawn very often. It either took me another few tier 1s near spawn to get a sword, or I'd go like 4 minutes without even finding one. Like in this clip, this guy followed me off spawn for a few minutes and I had to run till I could find a weapon. Sometimes I would get lucky and I'd be able to pick off a random guy a couple minutes into the game who has no idea what he's doing, but he has some decent armor. And I'll be able to get at least some gear that way. Otherwise, I'd have to resort to running around and scavenging for gear. But like I said earlier, the tiering is random, so that would be difficult. That leads me to my second big struggle, which was fighting people with really OP gear when I had like none in comparison, specifically enchanted players. Just looking at the data on my chart, nearly 70% of my deaths were to players who outgeared me. It was pretty frustrating losing these fights because there was just literally nothing I could do sometimes, despite whatever momentum I had during the fight. I noticed just in general that I found myself being undergeared way more often in comparison to playing on my main account, and this will come up again later on. Now, it definitely wasn't impossible to get good gear though. It was just a lot more difficult, and the fights I took were way riskier, but for the amount of times I lost due to my lack of gear, there were just as many times I still won fights despite my gear, so it was kind of like a high risk, high reward type thing. Fighting teams was difficult as well, especially the early game fights where I barely have any armor, and getting cleaned up, that was also difficult. There were many moments where I'd be winning a fight against someone in a team, or I just have killed some stacked player and I'm left with low health, and I'm just not able to escape getting cleaned up because of my lack of gear. But honestly, once I did get to a certain degree of stacked, there wasn't really any disadvantage of being on a clean account. I had no abilities available to me like double damage, but it's not like I'm relying on it in fights. I'm still able to take fights the same way I would on my main. Speaking of double damage, which should be removed by the way, that was also pretty frustrating. If you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, there is an ability that you can buy in the shop with in-game currency where you get a chance of dealing double damage with your attacks when you're below 3 hearts.
So he's got more than one. I'd probably lost then.
Now, more and more people like you.
Oh, fuck.
Well,
did you get double damage?
Yeah, twice.
You got it twice? What?
Yeah, that's what happened when I fought. Yeah.
Obviously, being on a different account won't affect how often somebody gets double damage on me. The only thing being affected is how often I'm getting the ability on them, which would be 0 because I had no perks. However, there were still a lot of occasions where I lost fights due to the other player getting double damage on me, and it's just like, damn, I kind of got robbed and I deserve to win that, but it is what it is. Because imagine if I had perks too, and I had also gotten double damage, or if I had stronger armor to shield me better against the effects of that perk. Because I was totally in a position to win that fight, and if the perk wasn't a thing, I would have won it. But overall, the trend I noticed in every game was that the first minute usually sets the tone for the rest of the match. Either I'll be successful and I'll get a lot of picks off spawn and I'll be super geared, or I'll be struggling for the rest of the game. There were plenty of occasions as well where one kill was all I needed to go from being under geared to being stacked though. It's just that the risk was way higher. There were also some games where I'd go with like 6 kills, and then some games where I'd only have 1, and I'd run for the entire game and then kill the last person in deathmatch. I noticed I'd use my head way more in fights to compensate for my lack of loot, because I can't just aimlessly run into fights and swing my sword and expect to win trades with 0 effort like I normally might. Fighting enchanted players and getting geared enough to even fight them to begin with were easily the 2 most difficult aspects for me with the rookie portion of this video. As for the donator side of things were drastically different, as you'll see in the chart results later. For one, I didn't have to resort to spawn killing as an easier, lazier method of getting loot. Just a trend throughout all of my games, I found that I had a way easier time getting geared. It wasn't me being the one under geared now, I was actually the one out gearing most players. It was pretty clear in my results, comparing to 39 deaths to being ungeared as a rookie. I only had 10 being on this donator account. Another big thing was having levels. This put me on a way more even playing field with the other high level players who enchant like crazy, like I mentioned earlier. And while normally playing on my main, I try not to go too overboard with enchanting. Like I said in the intro, I'm allowed to go as crazy as I want with this because I'm playing to win. So on maps like Rise of Orient, I faced a way better chance against teams, especially the enchanted one. Another thing, compasses just made the game so much more enjoyable. I could actually find people, and I didn't have a single game as a donator that went over 15 minutes. Long games here and there are okay, but when every game goes over 10 minutes, personally I just get bored, so I found the compass really nice. Not necessarily OP, and it wasn't really game changing, but it was really convenient and made it much more enjoyable. Overall, I would say I had a much easier chance at winning games, but no guarantees. There were still some factors that remained the same as a donator. I was cleaned up just as many times as on the rookie account, and the amount of hackers I died to stayed the same as well, which was surprisingly low, by the way. I was spawn killed a few more times, but the difference is minimal, so it doesn't really mean much. I did not keep track of the amount of times I got double damage or any other abilities that saved my life, but I did note down the amount of times I suspected other people killing me due to these perks, and I noticed that this quantity was a lot lower. So again, that variable depends on the other player, not really on myself, but it's still worth noting down, I suppose. I think the biggest takeaway from the donator side of the experiment though was just how much more at ease I could play. The point of this experiment is to play to win, so I was definitely putting in an effort for the most part, but generally I just was not as tense in fights. Now, for the full results. A majority of these games were played earlier in the summer when SG was more active, around June to July, and the final few were done over the past week. On the rookie account, I won 44 games out of 100 with 344 total kills and 56 deaths. On the donator account, I won 59 out of 100 games with 473 kills and 41 deaths. With that being said, I would consider those stats pretty damn good, even though some of it definitely attributes to luck. Now here's the thing, I've been playing SG on MCCentral since the server opened nearly 7 years ago. In June, I also tracked the first 100 games I played on my main account that month, and my ratio was in the high 70s. When leaderboards first reset, I was ranked number 9, and right now I've climbed back up to number 8. So clearly I know my way around the game mode. For a brand new player to the server, they likely are not going to get these same results. It's going to take them a while to learn the metas on MCC with enchanting and teams and so on, so there's going to be more trial and error. And that's if they even decide to stay on the server after getting one-tapped by enchanted players to begin with. So to be clear, this entire video isn't meant to mimic a player playing on the server for the first time. It's a comparison with my own results. It would be virtually impossible for me to do an experiment like that with SG solely by myself due to my past experience like I just mentioned. In comparison to the rest of the server, only 8 players out of the top 25, including myself, have a ratio that's 44% or higher, with 2 of them literally being at 44%. And if we include the second page and increase it to top 50, that number increases by 1. and that one player just so happened to cheat his way up leaderboard, so he honestly shouldn't even count, but screw it, we'll add him to make it 9. So that's some trivia for you guys who like numbers. So with that said, a 44% is pretty good, especially with no kits whatsoever, and very minimal and limited enchanting. Back to the original question. Is MCCentral Survival Games pay to win? Well, this could honestly be argued both ways. There was definitely a noticeable difference in certain stats. My KDR nearly doubled as a donator, and I wasn't dying while undergeared as often. Having a compass and a couple hundred levels at my disposal definitely made a difference and made the game way more convenient to play. I know some people would consider paying for even a slight convenience, which would be a compass in this case, as pay to win, so I can see that argument. However, I stressed a 44% ratio on a no perks account for a reason. That's pretty good in comparison to the rest of the server. I'd say average, if not above average, and nearly 60% solo without cheating, cough cough, is way above average. And to me, my results prove that all the perks and kits aren't necessary, and at the end of the day, you can still win games without them. They give an advantage, but not a game-breaking one. Enchants are where I draw the line, but that's for another day. So with that all said, my own conclusion is that SG isn't necessarily pay to win. I'd argue that it's more play to win. Again, you can disagree, but based off of my results, I think my conclusion is fair. A lot of people complain that the kits are so expensive and that you can only win if you buy ranks, but once again, this is completely not true. When Abzy gave me this account to use, it was level 2, so it already had a number of games played on it with a few credits. When I finished it, this account was at level 15. Not many people know this, but each level you gain in game equates to 1,000 credits. So with that being said, I gained about 13,000 credits while playing on her account, and that's not even including the fact that you can vote for an extra 500 every day. That is more than enough to purchase all of the tier chest kits, which in total costs 11k credits. Buying the bread and bow kits as well as an additional 3,000. Obviously abilities will cost much more, but it's not like the starter kits aren't impossible to purchase without a rank. The abilities are situational and you can't activate them on demand like the tier chest kits, so it's more beneficial to get the tier chests first anyway. On the other hand, if you do buy Immortal rank, the most expensive rank on the server, you can get an instant 11,000 credits as well as a 2.5 credit multiplier, which again is where I start drawing the line because of enchants. Once again, 1,000 credits is one level, so when you have a 2.5 multiplier, yeah, in my opinion, the server is already play to win enough with the kits and abilities, but enchants on top of that is too much for me. Better alternative is to disable levels and add XP bottles in tier 2s, but like I said earlier, that argument is for another day. My point that they aren't vital to success is still very valid. It's just going to take longer to level up, but not that long if you do everything optimally. Anyways, my conclusion is that to me, survival games on MCC is not pay to win. Go ahead and argue about it in the comments. I could definitely still understand the other side of the argument though, especially when enchants are brought into the conversation. To be clear, this video is not sponsored by the admins or anything to make the server look good. Just because I'm staff doesn't mean much. This is all my own opinion. There are plenty other areas of the server where I would agree, yeah, this is pretty pay to win, but survival games isn't one of those. Originally, this video wasn't even going to be about the pay to win factor. I saw Athonian's forum post, shout out once again, and I thought it would be a cool video idea to replicate the challenge just for fun but with no perks. And then while gathering clips, I thought to myself, why don't I spice it up and click And while gathering clips, I thought to myself, why don't I spice it up and slap a whole deeper meaning on the video? Anyways, thank you all for watching. I appreciate it a lot. This video took me quite a while. I started working on this in like June, and I went hardcore with this challenge turned experiment for like 2 weeks and got most of the footage recorded, and then I forgot about it until a couple days ago. If you guys have other challenge type video ideas, be sure to leave them in the comments, or if I should replicate the same experiment with something like Skywars on MC Central. I've got more informational type content in the works regardless, so if you enjoyed this, stay tuned for that anyway. I'm also putting out a straw poll in the description for you guys to vote on because I'm interested in how other people feel, because this is all my own opinion. And lastly, I know I'm going to get flooded with questions about the packs, so just ask in the comments with a timestamp and I'll get back to you. I'll see you soon.